You're listening to an Anazao Ministries podcast.
When there is a gap or void in leadership, when leadership is missing, what is a healthy way to fill that void? Who's going to step up and take the leadership position? King, queen, president, committee chair, council president, pastor, editor of Systematic Geekology. Those are burning questions that people are asking, especially when coming to the movie that we're going to hype up right now. Hello, friends. Welcome to Systematic Geekology. I am your host, Will Rose. And today we are going to hype up and prep you for the new movie that I can't wait for, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. And if I sound a little nasally, sound a little deeper, it's because I have a head cold. But I'm going to get through this with your help and your patience. And I'm really excited that I'm joined with one of my favorite people named Josh, who is going to be a part of this episode with me. And we may get into it. We have different takes or what we're excited about with this movie or not excited about. I couldn't be more excited about this movie. But Joshua, how are you? What's going on? How are you doing today?
Well, I couldn't care less about this movie, but here I am. I'm excited to talk to Will.
Geek heretic. Wait, no geek shaming. We're not going to geek shame you, buddy. We're going to explain that. We're going to iron this all out. You're coming to our therapy session, and I'm going to help. I'm going to help Joshua through this.
Yeah. We're going to disagree well today, guys. I'm Joshua Knoll. I'm excited to be here and to talk to Will. One of my I must say one of my best friends. He's just such a cool guy. What have I been geeking out on lately? I don't know. I'm the co-host of Whole Church Podcast. I've also been geeking out on pollen and allergies with Will.
Oh, man. Yeah,
it's been fun really getting into that, I guess.
Yeah, well, I'll share. I'm geeking out. Like I've done a couple of these Halloween episodes with Joe and a few others, and I was like, what scary movie or what am I gonna watch on Halloween or leading up to Halloween? And I've heard Joe talk about how much he loves Wes Craven, and so like I pulled up like Wes Craven movies, and I found one that I wanted to watch on Halloween, and it's the original 1980s version of Swamp Thing. Wes Craven's Swamp Thing. And if you haven't seen it, oh man, it's so bad. It's good.
We all going to do an episode about that soon?
I hope we can, because it is so bad. It's good. And I remember seeing it when I was a kid on HBO or whatever. And it's not necessarily a kid's movie, but yeah, it's wacky. It's nutty. And I can't wait to talk about it. It's a DC character and Wes Craven, and they put all that together, put it in some like swampy mix, and, we'll see what we get out. But it was fun. That was fun to watch.
I figured out what I've actually been geeking out on. It's the same thing I geek out on every November. It's just something that you don't typically associate with the word geek. But it's turkey and Thanksgiving.
Oh, man.
I've been looking up all the different ways some of my favorite people have been preparing their turkeys this year, looking up different techniques and stuff that I can use for that. And I'm like, trying to figure out how I want to portion my turkey, how many turkeys I want to make this year. Last year, I think I ended up making 4. Something I do this year.
You made 4 turkeys.
God,
I know.
So great.
I know. As much as Joe loves Halloween, as much as I love summer for surfing, Joshua loves November and loves Thanksgiving. It's his favorite holiday. And it is pretty funny. Like, you had the big build up to October 31st, All Hallows Eve, and then it's over in a night, and then they just sweep off all these candies, and then they try to put as much Christmas stuff on the shelf. And but sometimes Thanksgiving and Thanksgiving prep gets lost in the mix.
Well, so for those of us who do love Thanksgiving and geek out on it, to be transparent, part of it is because it's such a low key holiday. As Jimmy Buffett called it in his song "Santa Stole Thanksgiving," it was such a laid back holiday, and also as Jimmy Buffett demonstrates, Thanksgiving geeks, part of the geekdom is just resenting that Christmas comes too early. I try to avoid that, but it just seemed to be a thing with those of us who love Thanksgiving.
There you go. Well, it is November, and November is a big month for food, but I also say geeks and those who geek out on the MCU. We have a pretty daggone big movie dropping pretty soon, and I already have my tickets for it. And the trailer, when it dropped, I watched it maybe 20 times in a row because of the music and because of the beats. And I cried maybe 3 or 4 times. And the second trailer came out and I teared up at that one too. And so I'm really excited about this movie. We're talking about Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, Black Panther 2. And the question was, he was such a big hit and a fan favorite when he debuted in Captain America: Civil War. Then he got his own movie, The Black Panther. Chadwick Boseman knocked it out of the park in terms of that character. And then we had like the surprise death in August of 2020. If 2020 couldn't gotten any worse, he kept it really close to his chest that he had colon cancer. And so when he did die, it was a surprise to big fans everywhere, and the fans of his work and also fans of what he did with Black Panther. So the question was like, man, how in the world are they going to keep this franchise going? How are they going to do another Black Panther movie? It was such a big success. It was such a fan favorite. What are they going to do next? But we've done our best to get through COVID tide and everything that went and happened in 2020. And Marvel is in a new phase, and they have the Disney Plus streaming service and shows and things that kind of fill in gaps. Well, now we have this movie, Wakanda Forever, and I'm curious how they're going to tell this story without him. And I think just kind of thinking about it a little bit, Black Panther resonated so much with people of Black and brown skin who resonate with African descent, heritage, and it was kind of the rise of the Black superhero. There was something there that really resonated with the Black community. And again, Joshua and I are two white guys talking about this, but there's a friend of mine who's a member of our congregation who's a huge geek, and he's a Black professor and a big geek, and he loved that movie so much. We went and saw it together, and he loved it. And then when Chadwick died, I remember Louis putting on Twitter kind of his grief tweet was like, man, why can't us Black people have nice things? And I was like, oh man, it just sunk into my soul, like something was just kind of stolen from them. And so this rise of the Black superhero and trying to be more diverse on our superhero teams. With this movie, I think we're going to have the rise of the Black female superhero. We asked that question at the beginning: who's going to fill this gap in leadership? Who's going to fill in the gap of who's going to be the next Black Panther? Who's going to fill that role in leadership? And we see a grieving queen. We have a grieving sister. We have other characters that are going to come into play. So I'm really curious how they're going to tell this story. And that trailer got me. And so I'm really looking forward to this. Now, Joshua has some fandom around characters in this movie that he's a little skeptical about. So we'll hear about that, and then we'll respond to that. So Joshua, how are you feeling after all the buildup from the last movie and what has happened since then to now? You said you couldn't care. Is it part of a grief? Is it part of like you're disassociating from it because you're scared you're going to get hurt? What's going on here? I'm trying to psychoanalyze what's going on with you.
Man, you said so much that I want to respond to, but a short answer to your question first is that first trailer dropped, and I realized I've never been more bored during a Marvel trailer. I was like, this is just so uninteresting.
Wow.
Which is the exact opposite reaction that everybody else had. But, I'm Josh with the wrong opinions.
That's right. Yep. I'm going to just let you express yourself without me.
So to backtrack, to respond to all of the many things that Will has to say.
Yeah.
First, I just want to point out that Chadwick Boseman was one of the most impressive people you're going to ever read about. This dude had cancer while he was filming these things, did a lot of these stunts himself. Have you seen the things that Black Panther did in these movies? Like, dear God, that man was impressive. If he didn't have cancer, I would have been just in awe of some of what he did. Doing that with colon cancer? Wow. What an impressive human. Also, I want to backtrack too. He gave me the ultimate bragging rights over my brother, which is the greatest gift anyone's ever given me. When the movie 42 came out, about was it Jack Robinson, the baseball player?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
We watched that movie in theaters. Phenomenal movie. And I'm watching this. I looked at this guy playing this character, and I looked at my brother and went, that man is going to be Black Panther one day. And my brother looked me in the face and said, and I wrote it down for him. He said, they will never make a Black Panther movie, Josh. Stop.
Ooh.
And then not only did they make the movie, they chose the guy that I chose for them.
You called it.
And I was like, yeah. What now, Matt? So, Matt, if you're listening, I was still right. Brag. I just get to do that forever now. Thank you, Mr. Bozeman.
Well, I can't wait for this next movie to be really, really good and be one of the best movies of all time. And then I'll brag to Joshua and I'll say, look, eat your words. This is a fantastic movie.
So, okay. So all that being said, yeah, the trailers didn't impress me. I don't even know if I watched the second trailer. I was like, whatever. I watched the most recent trailer. Has there been more than 2?
I think there's been a few. Yeah.
Okay. So I've seen the newest one and I saw the first one. I don't know about the ones in between. I have a lot of thoughts. Primarily, Phase 4 has not been the most entertaining phase of Marvel. I equate it to Phase 2 of Marvel, with the exception of the shows. The shows have all been great. Well, not all. Most of them have been great. I loved majority of the Marvel shows that have been coming out on Disney+. But overall, Phase 4 is just kind of It feels like a filler one. I know they said that that's sort of the point, but I'm just like, I don't understand, especially because all of our phases up until now climaxed with a big Avengers movie. This one, supposedly, this is it. The climax is Black Panther 2, and the movie's going to be about, man, it's sad we have a new Black Panther. And also, hey, here's Namor. And I'm like, I don't see how that is a universal, like, for the universe, how that is a climax for the end of Phase 4. I'm kind of confused about that, but they might surprise me. They might throw in some scroll. I'm kind of hoping, I'm holding out a little bit of hope that part of what happens is that both sides are antagonized of Namor and the Atlanteans, and the Black Panther and the Wakandans both think each other are secret attacking each other. But instead, I'm hoping that the scroll set some people up and cause the war to happen. That's what I'm hoping for.
Okay.
But, I doubt it. But I'm hoping for it. We know the Secret War is coming up. We know Skrull exists in the universe. It's possible.
Well, Joshua and I did a comic book catch up recently, and you can go over to Patreon and listen to that. And we kind of went off on the end about some of our hopes for that. Was pretty fun, and we'll talk a little bit about that there. Yeah. But I'm with you. I do think Phase 4 is hard. I mean, I think Infinity War and Endgame stuck the landing for 10 years of movies and build up and continuity. It's really hard after that to like really like what's next. You just try to find your legs again. And I think, and then you have COVID, and then you have like separation and distancing and societal breakdowns when it comes to politics and a worldwide pandemic. So I'm not going to blame it all on that. I think there's a little bit of loss of directions and that kind of stuff. So I'm with you. There's parts of Phase 4 I was disappointed with because there wasn't that connective tissues of building up to something coming. I'm really hoping that Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, it will begin to like, maybe it's going to be just a standalone on its own and that'll be fine. But I'm hoping there's some connecting tissues that's going to lead into the next phase and maybe widen the universe a little more, connect a little bit since they've had a little bit more time to work on it.
Well, see, here's part of my problem with blaming the pandemic, right? They used it to their advantage in the greatest of the MCU TV shows. You look at Falcon and the Winter Soldier, my favorite personally. I know it's not everybody's favorite. A lot of people say WandaVision's the best. Whatever, we can disagree. But they used it to their advantage because that whole show is about what happens when society breaks down, and that's part of what made that show so cool is that it was relatable. You were like, oh yeah, this is what it's like when we're suddenly thrown back into reality and none of us know how to do it.
Yeah,
I think they could have done that because of how Endgame ended. They could have done that with all of the movies and made it extremely relatable for those of us coming out of the pandemic. And instead, it's almost like they're kind of trying to brush it off and move on. And it's like, that's not something we can move on from that easily.
Yeah. And I think with this movie coming up, they're going to have to address that, Chadwick not being a part of the movie, the Black Panther that was a part of Civil War and Infinity War and Endgame had such a major role in those things. Yeah, that T'Challa is no longer with us, and so who does feel that void? And I think the beginning of the movie is going to address. There'll be a funeral. They'll address he dies off screen somewhere or something happens and they're grieving. So I think they need some time to allow that grief to happen. In WandaVision, it dealt with grief. The whole thing was about grief at a time when the whole nation and fandom and people were grieving the loss of so much over the pandemic. It really struck home. So I'm thinking that the beginning of this movie is going to do that too. And then you kind of lean in, who's going to fill the leadership role? Who's the next Black Panther? And then you have these other things happen in the Marvel universe, Black Ops. You have a precious commodity and that Wakanda has, and then you have these other nations trying to see who's going to be top dog. Like all those things, I'm there for it and ready to see. And so I'm going to go in. I'm going to try to be a TJ and let my expectations go. I know what I'd like to see and some connecting tissues, but if they don't do it, they don't do it. Now I know you've had some problems with Namor, the Submariner. Is a part of this thing. But before I know you've had, it's not exactly like the Marvel comics. I mean, we can go into his character a little bit, but before we get there, what are you thinking, Josh?
Yeah. I want to talk some about this leadership thing you mentioned.
Yeah.
Because it's not only going to be T'Challa who passed away and who's going to fill Black Panther. We're also seeing Iron Man passed away and who's going to be filling in for Iron Man. We're going to be introduced to the Ironheart character. And that's one of those things that they're not showing a ton of in the commercials, that just like, I got to say, bragging rights again, I called America Chavez was going to be a bigger part of Doctor Strange 2 than anybody thought. I'm thinking the same thing's going to happen here with Ironheart. She's going to be a little bit bigger part than people think she's going to be. And it's going to show some of this parallel of how do we fill in these holes? And you're going to have both of those characters trying to fill some huge shoes that they can't fill in. Also, just to kind of do some of the backdrop stuff, a lot of people were trying to figure out who's going to be the next Black Panther after T'Challa before the trailer dropped. And a lot of people basically just said, whatever it is, we hope it's not Shuri. We hope it's not Letitia Wright. And that's who we got. And the reason for that, I actually think is sort of valid personally. She plays a super science character and went around the actress being anti-vax.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not going to get political or anything like that, but to the scientific community, it's kind of offensive to have someone claiming to be a science who's kind of anti-science.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and that kind of thing, definitely. Hopefully, we can disassociate or kind of put our minds to rest or political leanings as we watch the movie. But back to Ironheart, Riri Williams, I think the backdrop for her is that she debuted in an Iron Man comic in 2016. I think it's volume 3, number 7. I wrote down in my notes. Brian Michael Bendis created kind of a new character, Ironheart, a teenager who has a scientific mind like Tony Stark, and he mentors her, and she does her own kind of Iron Man suit. So pulling her in to this movie, knowing she's going to have also a Disney Plus show, I'm curious how they're going to pull in her and what's her origin, how she gets connected, if she's just on her own or connected to Wakanda, or just like a teenager in America somewhere who's playing in her garage with tech. I'm really curious how they build her character. I've heard the actress is really good, and I'm looking forward to some, we don't get new characters. They build these legacy characters, but here's a brand new one that was debuted in the comics not that long ago, where you have Namor, who was like debuted in the 1940s. And here we have someone who debuted in 2016, how they mix those two together.
Yeah. I am, of all of the things in this movie, the thing I'm most looking forward to is Ironheart, probably because it's the thing we know the least about. So I'm really just excited to see what they do with her.
All right, so for those who are listening, it might be it's nothing you can't look up on Wikipedia, but Namor, the Submariner, was really kind of Marvel's first mutant, first hero. Back in 1939, debuted in Timely Comics. This is before it was Marvel Comics. There was Timely Comics. And so Timely Comics produced Marvel Comics #1 and debuted Namor, the Submariner, who the king of Atlantis, who is definitely the Aquaman of the Marvel universe, and different kind of power set and kind of thing. And so he has a long history in the Marvel universe with deep connections to Captain America, the Human Torch, not the Fantastic Four Human Torch, but the android, the Human Torch. And they were part of the Invaders and the Defenders around World War II era of these comics that were coming out. And then eventually he has strong ties to the Fantastic Four and that whole kind of side and wing and fandom of Marvel. So they're debuting him and Black Panther. And Black Panther, he debuted in Fantastic Four number 52 in 1966. So Black Panther has a Fantastic Four connection. Namor has a Fantastic Four. Whether they bring that into this movie or not, I don't know. We'll see who's behind the scenes. We'll see. That's kind of my hopes. But Namor, you were hoping it was more towards the comic origins than kind of a South American Aztec kind of underwater civilization.
It was sort of, not really, but sort of. So first, we're talking about the comics, because the comics are really cool with this. One of the very first Marvel comics that were actually Marvel introduced the thing of the superheroes fighting each other. Mm-hmm. And you had Namor fighting Human Torch, not the Fantastic Four Human Torch.
Right.
Back in the day, there was a Human Torch that was basically the same story as Frankenstein. They were doing some experiments and turned a man into the Human Torch. And he was like the hero of humanity, but humanity is, polluting the ocean, all this stuff. And Namor is the hero of this underground or underwater city, Atlantis. And he's like, well, I got to protect Atlantis. Also, Namor is a huge jerk. He's always a huge jerk. He is the
short fused, as you would say.
Let me see. If I were to characterize who Namor is, if you grew up in church and you knew that one kid who always thought he knew the Bible better than everybody else, and he was like throwing it in your face, and he was a jerk, but he was like a holier than thou jerk, so he wasn't even really that cool. That's sort of Namor. Namor is a holier than thou jerk.
Yeah, someone who walks around in a Speedo with his shirt off, kind of flexing his chest, kind of bowing up on everyone, knowing that he's got like not just a 6-pack, but probably an 8-pack of abs, walking around just kind of flaunting his stuff.
Oh, yeah.
That there's that thing too. I mean, in many ways, he's got a good point in terms of how humans treat our oceans. So he definitely the prophetic voice when it comes to that. But yeah, he's a hero. He's super strong. He can do what he wants, but yeah, he's very short fused, and don't get on his wrong side. Yeah.
He often attacks humanity because humanity sucks, which he's not wrong.
Right.
And
right.
yeah, the holier than thou thing is, Atlanteans have better moral values. So he's kind of morally superior in his own mind, because humans fight each other, humans pollute the earth, all this stuff, and Atlanteans don't do any of that. Atlantis is awesome. And when you see Atlantis, it is actually awesome. It looks really, really cool in the comics. It's super advanced. It's got a really nice vibe to it. It's very much, imagine a futuristic city, but under the water. And like futuristic as in like how Disney used to imagine future, where like it looks like Tomorrowland and Squidward comes out and goes, "Why is everything chrome?" It's kind of like that.
Yeah.
That's where I was disappointed in the trailer. Part of what I was disappointed, mostly it came off as boring. And with these two civilizations attacking each other, I think the trailer could have been more interesting. But also, it's just Atlantis is supposed to look a lot cooler, and it's supposed to seem a lot more advanced. In this trailer, it was just sort of flexing, it is Aztecan. I'm like, okay, well, that's cool. Let it be Aztecan, but also let it still look futuristic and cool and not just Aztecan. Like, it can be more than that. Wakanda, they did more than that. You can do more than that here too.
Yeah, I hear you. I think they're leaning away from Atlantis and more into kind of an Aztecan, I'm not even saying that right, or South American culture. And I grew up by the ocean. I'm a huge fan of the ocean and playing in the water and swimming. I've been on a year-round swim team most of my life and surf. And so just the ocean, I've always loved the ocean and playing in the ocean. So you give me a good sea creature and someone who can swim fast and lives underwater, I'm there. Yeah. So I'm in. So I'm curious how they can do all that, especially with the next like Avatar movie coming out, where most of it's in the water and the creatures, they're playing around with that. Marvel's going to do their version of like people underwater riding whales and using dolphins as like speedboats. I don't know, but I'm those visuals I'm really looking forward to and can't wait to marvel at it.
It could be done pretty well. I know a lot of people also complained because they thought Namor always looked more Japanese, and they thought that this could have been Marvel's opportunity to include more Asian culture. I don't care as much about that. I was just like, I want it to look like Atlantis. I don't care about that. Right. I don't care what culture you decide to put it in. Let it look futuristic and chrome, mostly chrome. I wanted chrome.
Yeah, and I guess I was kind of away from the news with most of this, so I didn't even know Namor was going to be in this movie until I saw the trailer, and I was like, "Holy crap, they're doing that!" So I was kind of excited to see them pull that in.
That would have been a different experience.
Yeah,
if you didn't know Namor was going to be. I already knew Namor. I was like, "Oh, what's Namor going to look like?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's it."
yeah. I don't know why it caught me by surprise, but I was kind of out of that loop.
That's cool though. That's good. That's a good thing to be surprised by.
Now, in terms of the movie beats, have you seen the Creed movies that Ryan Coogler have said? I've heard they're really good, but his directing style, action, dialogue, I think is really strong. It was in the other movie, and I've heard the Creed movies are really great. So I'm excited he's back on board with this one, and really looking forward to it.
I have been, so a couple things I've been rereading and prep for this that I think everybody should check out. Submariner Revolution.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've said Submariner my whole life. So wheels got on me and I realized I was wrong, naturally.
Yeah. There you go.
I'm wrong often. But it is right after the Marvel Civil War event. Namor and Tony Stark were on opposite ends of that war, but they're still friends. Anyway, Tony Stark is in charge of S.H.I.E.L.D., and 2 Atlanteans attack the U.S. Well, Atlantis is famous for being, well-controlled. Namor knows everything that happens. It must have been Namor somehow. Tony, goes down to Atlantis as part of S.H.I.E.L.D., leading S.H.I.E.L.D., and Namor's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to go figure it out. I'm going to go find these guys. He's just like, I'm peace. And Tony's like, no, I can't let you do that because, law. But obviously, all of S.H.I.E.L.D. cannot stop one Namor because he's Namor. So he just bullets through their sea ships, submarines, whatever you call them. And the comic is just a mini series of him trying to find out which Atlanteans were attacking the Earth and why. And it turns out it has a lot to do with humans suck. We can't be at peace with them because we don't want to be associated, and humans suck. And Namor is trying to do some personal growth, realizing, yes, humans suck, but we don't have it all figured out either. And that's hard for Namor because Namor is extremely arrogant. Extremely arrogant. But you get to see him beat up Wolverine, beat up Venom. He beats up everybody in this. It's a lot of fun. The other one, Marvels by, how do I say this? Alex Busick?
Alex Ross is the artist, and Kurt Busiek is the author. Yep.
Yeah. It is a story of an ordinary reporter who lived through most of Marvel's major events early on. So think, when Gwen Stacy died, Spider-Man, all that kind of stuff. And it starts with a reimagining of the battle of Human Torch and Namor from an ordinary person's perspective. The main reason I like it is because the art is absolutely beautiful. Like, it's breathtaking. So definitely worth checking out. And you can kind of see what Namor started off as before seeing where he's at now.
Yeah. And if you look up like top 10 favorite graphic novels of all time, usually Marvel's is in there. Where similar to Kingdom Come with DC, same artist, same kind of storytelling from a person, from a commoner's point of view, from down looking up at the battles going on, and really good backstory and reimagining of those kind of original Marvel heroes or characters. I'll share too. A comic you could get into is we mentioned Brian Michael Bendis when it comes to Riri Williams, but back in 2006, I think, New Avengers. He did a book on New Avengers, and there was an Illuminati story arc where kind of those behind the scenes, the top heroes, come together every now and then to think through the bigger problems that are kind of behind the scenes. And on that team, and then a part of the Illuminati, you have Namor, you have Black Panther, you have Reed Richards, you have Tony Stark. You have these folks kind of are sitting around the table, putting their differences aside to say, all right, what's going on? Professor X a part of that. So kind of similar to the Illuminati that we saw in Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness. You had the comic book version there back in 2006. So I doubt they have time for that in this movie, but it's there, and there's those relationships that they're building off of.
The director of Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, wanted to include Namor and was basically told no.
It wasn't his time yet,
but he wanted to have him in the Illuminati there too. You mentioned Fantastic Four earlier, so I got to throw out there. I believe they're either going to have a cameo or they're going to be an end credit scene, but I think we're going to see them.
I will say that they're probably going to wait to debut who the Fantastic Four are. My kind of like long shot is that Doctor Doom is going to be the end credit scene. That's going to be the one behind it all, orchestrating this battle between Black Panther
That'll make
and
Phase 5
Namor.
way more interesting.
Yeah, and so he's the next big baddie, because he's got his own. How do you say his country? Latveria. Latveria is like his country, and so he has his own territory that he's trying to.
That would be cool.
Doctor Doom is
the Fantastic Four ship or something.
Yeah. Or like Doctor Doom shows up or something. I don't. He's not going to be the big bad, but it would be kind of fun to see them Easter egg with him, Fantastic Four end credit scene. I don't know if they're going to do it. We'll see, but that's my big hope. Maybe Doctor Doom finally.
We like to think deeper on this show, and we're going to wrap up here in a little bit, but I wanted to throw out something since we were talking about the secession of leadership, and one of my favorite world religion studies. When I was in college, was seeing how almost all world religions, there is someone who led, someone who was kind of at the start of it. Think Jesus, think Muhammad. That's a good one. Muhammad's actually, to me, the easiest one to see with what I'm talking about here. When that leadership leaves, you will see two different leaders try to come up. And either there will be a split of some sort, and that's when you start seeing these denominations and these different things like that. Or what you see is they try to split and something comes out and they find a way to reconcile something like that. But Christianity is interesting because what they'll point to is Peter and Paul originally. Peter kind of leading it a little bit more towards the Hebrew culture for a while, then moving to Rome, and Paul going, no, we don't need the old laws at all. Right. And that's sort of what they point at there. If you're looking at it from a world religion perspective, Muhammad, there was two, and one is hard for me to pronounce. By hard, I mean impossible for me to pronounce. It's like Ali Talib. And then the other one is, I thought I'd come up with, the other one is Abu Bakr. I don't know how to say that exactly. Abu and Ali. I'm going to go by first names. Act like we're friends. And you see, the one, Abu, was Muhammad's father-in-law. So they had this family relationship. But the other one was sort of his mentee, someone who trained under him from a philosophy kind of standpoint. And you saw that split early on, and you still see it with the Shiite Muslims and the Shuri Muslims. That's where the split started. As soon as he fell, what happens with leadership? Now, I'm assuming in this movie, they're not going to make it a religion, naturally. But there is a religion too, Wakanda. The Black Panther is the religious head, as well as the political head, as well as their war hero. So when you see T'Challa step down, I'm curious if we end up seeing two people try to make their claim to it. In fact, we'll probably see a few, because the way Wakanda establishes leadership is fighting.
Yeah.
So
well, there's this, we just saw, kind of in our world news, the Queen died. And so you had this kind of pomp and circumstance of kind of how this transition of power between king and queen and royal families, you'll see that in this movie because T'Challa was king and part of a family tree and who's going to do next. But then in the comics lately, they've wrestled with, well, should it be a democracy? Should there be votes? Should they have a Congress? Should they have a Senate? Should they have a ruling kind of council apart from the king? And the king's just kind of a status symbol, and then you have the real government and leadership happening to the side, which we've seen in Britain as well. So yeah, I mean, I hope that's a part of this too. There's some tension of who's going to fill that gap, how are you going to govern, who's going to step up. You're going to grieve the loss of someone, but then disagreements of what the natural is, and you see that in all, whether it's a CEO or transition of power in a presidency. Or even in a church, one pastor leaves, another one comes in. How does that happen? Does the pastor that's leaving kind of still keep up with their members? And the members who love that pastor who left want that one to do their kid's wedding or funeral. It's like, no, I'm not your pastor anymore. The pastor who's there is the one who's called to do that work. I'm at this other place, and we still have a relationship. I love you, but I'm not your pastor. So there's boundaries that happen. I think in terms of leadership and how that a healthy way to do that is very, very important. And we've seen in our own nation the toxicity behind someone who doesn't want to let go of power and call elections false and those kinds of things. So it's going to be a very political movie. And I think, and from those, here again, two white guys talking about this, but this is Black Panther, the original movie was very important to the Black community. This one is going to be as well. And so if us white folks, I I imagine there's going to be some white fragility when it comes to like black and brown people talking about politics and other nations coming in and colonization and the rise of the female black superhero. I think us white folks, I'll speak for myself. I'm going to do more listening than I am complaining or be more critical. I'm going to listen to those and talk and listen to my black and brown friends to say, well, what's your take with this movie? What do they get right? What do you critique before I chime in? I'm entitled to my own opinions, but I think it means something more to a different group than kind of my background and my where I am and my viewpoint or where I grew up in.
For the half of the movie that's Wakanda, I agree. For how they do Namor, I feel like I have every right to complain.
Really? You're a South American Aztec who grew up underwater as a king.
Namor's supposed to be white. That's not my problem. I'm kidding, guys. I'm kidding. I don't care what yeah. But I do have more attachment to the character because I grew up with him, and I didn't grow up with him as another race. So It's hard for me to, yes, I accept we need to show diversity, but also I do have attachment to this character. So I do care a little bit differently.
Sure.
Because he's been my favorite jerk most of my life.
Your favorite jerk.
My favorite jerk.
That's funny.
He's put it on a t-shirt. Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm interested to see what they do with the political stuff. I'm interested with the religious stuff as well. We've seen in the other Black Panther movie when, T'Challa succeeded his father, they had that movie, that clip where to the spiritual realm there, right? And we're not going to be able to have that same moment. Is there going to be a crisis of their religion? Is there going to be a crisis of faith because of that? I'm actually really interested in that aspect as well and how they do that.
That's right. The deconstruction of kind of the Black Panther theology or religion that could be questions of who is God? Why did God allow this to happen? Those are some good questions. And I'm wondering if there isn't some extra footage they left on the cutting room floor, kind of like they did with Princess Leia in The Rise of Skywalker. Yeah. That there may be a Chadwick Boseman cameo that they had from the other film, whether it's from the spiritual realm or whatever. He has a conversation with someone else. Like, I wonder how they'll do that, or what kind of permission his family gave to use his image and likeness in this movie, whether it's CGI face or whether it's some extra footage that they didn't use in the last movie. I'm very curious if they use that or not.
Yeah, I could see it either being where we still have some footage or some of his, audio clips or something, and that being used in a really powerful way. That's not just spiritual in the movie in this made up religion, but also might be spiritual for those of us who do feel like something's missing in the world because this man who meant a lot to a lot of people has moved on.
Yeah.
And I could see that. I could also see us relating to Shuri, where she is struggling with, she's supposed to be able to hear her brother and see her brother. And if they don't use any of that, I feel like it would be a huge crisis of faith. Okay, well, now that I'm Black Panther, I'll get to see him again. And then you don't.
Yeah.
That'll be tough. And that would be tough for the listeners, the people following the movie as well, who care about these characters.
Again, that tension between spirituality and science and tech, it's both there in this culture. And I can't wait to see how they handle that and what questions will arise out of it. Man, good stuff. Good discussion.
Oh yeah. And I mean, as Christians, we wrestle with it too, right? We don't have this thing of my grandparents who went before me are, like my gods or anything. But, we struggle with this idea of, are they in the ground waiting for the Lord to come and then they'll rise? Or are they up above looking down at me? Can I pray and then, hear me as I pray to God and be like, hey, let my grandmother know I'm thinking about her. I mean, if I go to her gravesite, am I able to commune in some way? Or am I just left waiting to one day I'll see her again? Or maybe not even that. Jesus talks about how, we'll all be one. It doesn't matter who you were married to. So will it even matter that she's my grandmother when I get there? And there's a lot even as Christians where we don't know those who went before us, how to relate to them well. And, we do our best. We're recording this on All Souls Day. I'm going to be lighting a candle at 7:00 and just thinking about my grandmother. I don't think I can communicate with her, my personal belief, but I'm going to be thinking about her. And my grandfather passed away this year too. So I'll be thinking about them, but I don't know. It's a hard thing to wrestle with, even as Christians who don't, view your people before you as gods.
Yeah. That's a good reflection. We're recording this the day after All Saints Day on November 1st, and today's All Souls Day, November 2nd. But Yeah, within the Nicene Creed and the Apostles' Creed that my church confesses and professes every Sunday during worship, there's a line there towards the end in that third article. It says, "I believe in the communion of saints," and that communion, that not only am I communing with God, entangled with God, and communing with Christ at the Lord's Supper, and in my daily faith, but also I'm connected with those who've gone before me and those who will come after me. There's just communion of saints, that we're all uh, entangled with one another, that our stories are entangled with one another. And that gives me hope that I'm not alone in this journey of faith, a journey of life, a journey of doubt, and all the ups and downs that comes with it, that I am intimately connected to those who've been before me, those saints that I know about and those who I don't know. Yeah. So yeah, I think I love that, and yeah, it's a little different than ancestor worship or kind of but I like to think that connective tissue or the Venn diagram that lays over some of those philosophies and theologies is this idea of a communion of saints.
Yeah, and as growing up Pentecostal and stuff, we still had the Nicene Creed, but we didn't interpret it to mean that. So I'm just now hearing that that's what that means as Lutherans, and I'm more Lutheran now. So hey, I get to believe that. That's cool.
Yeah,
but regardless of where you believe they are, and if you believe they can hear you or anything like that, I do think there's a lot of truth in wherever my grandparents are, for example. That's just making it personal for me. I know that they are in Christ, and I know that where I am at right now, I am in Christ. Mm-hmm. So in some sense, there is still that unity there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was deep. You want to wrap this up on something else?
Yes, wrap it up. Yeah, towards the end. Yeah, I hope you go see this movie. We'll go back around. Let us know on our social media sites and messages what you think of the movie. If we're missing a point or something you're looking forward to, let us know. Again, Priest of the Geeks on Facebook, and it's System of Geekology on Facebook. We're on Twitter as well, Instagram. Let us know. All right, let's get to some recommendations. Joshua, you said you had one.
I changed
me with. Oh, okay. Mine.
Of course. Well, I'll do both. How about that?
Okay.
I'm going to recommend people check out issue 5 and 6 of Captain America: Symbol of Truth by Toki Onyebuchi. I don't know if I'm saying that right. And R.B. Silva. Toki, assuming that's how I pronounce his name, is a new graphic novel author. Really good. I like his stuff so far a lot. Issues 5 and 6 show Captain America, Sam Wilson, as Captain America, wrestling with Black Panther and Wakanda right before this new movie comes out. And it's kind of showing some different perspectives of what the Wakanda culture is like and how do they react to people trying to, do stuff with their government from outside their government. And it kind of just shows a little bit of that tension in a way that I think will be meaningful for the movie. So that's going to be my comic recommendation. Nice. Other recommendation, go on Spotify. Look up Haitian worship, Christian worship. They have some fun songs, guys. It's just fun. Haitian worship is great, which I looked up because I am organizing for my other podcast, the Every Tribe, Denomination, and Tongue Convention. It'll be April 27th to 29th in Charlotte. Let me know if you want to know more about it. But we're going to be having worship from all these different cultures and all these different languages, and we're going to have some Haitian worship at the event. And I was like, well, let me hear what that's like. And I love it so far. Yeah.
Nice. My first church was down in South Florida, and so it was a heavy Haitian community down there. So nice. Very, very fun. My recommendation is a little different, but I will, since this movie it stars and has leads of Black and brown folk, people of color, of African descent. Often racism, systemic racism has been a big part of our national and societal conversations over the last few years, as it should be, in a long time. And so my recommendation, often in kind of Christianity, biblical interpretation, light is seen as good, dark is seen as bad. We call Jesus the light of the world. We talk about don't get into the darkness of things. And people of color often see that as kind of like a slight towards him. That kind of way of seeing theology is kind of white supremacy within our theology. And someone gifted me with a children's book called God's Holy Darkness. And we have it in our library here at church. And I recommend that. Look it up on Amazon or your local bookstore. God's Holy Darkness. I'm going to butcher their names, but I think it's Shari Green and Becca Selnick. And so and kind of authors and arts. It's a children's book with art and words, and kind of talks about how darkness can be holy as well from a biblical point of view, and lifting those parts in Scripture where it talks about darkness being a holy space as well. So yeah, check that out. A different way of looking, different perspective, theological perspective, think of things.
Sounds nice.
All right. Well, thank you guys for listening. We couldn't do it without you. Share with a friend. Tag us in a social media post. Go see the movie. Reach out to us. If you want to join Patreon, we'd love for you to. That's a growing community right now, and it helps us move forward with, who knows? You know what I mean? Joshua talked about doing this whole church conference. Maybe one day we'll do a systematic ecology con, or show up at one.
I can't tell you what it'll be, but my plan for the moment is to give patrons special discounts on that convention. So
there you go.
It'll exist.
Go hunt us down.
Don't know what it'll be, but it'll exist.
All right, go see this movie. We love you guys. You are loved, and remember always: share the faith, share the geek.
This was an Anazao Ministries podcast. If you enjoyed this show and would like to learn more about our network, be sure to check out the Anazao Ministries Podcast Network.